Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast. So, as you can see, I've got my orange hat on, woodland hoodie on with the deer, and we're going to be talking about something today. No, it's not hunting, but it is kind of related in a way, and that is what's going on with our forest and our woodlands. So, the topic I'm going to be discussing today affects many things. It affects hunters, it affects those out hiking. It affects our climate, and I'm not going to get into the whole political thing about the climate and climate control and all this switch to electric and everything, but it'll have something to do about it, but we're not going to get political. So, in my last couple of videos, I posted one last year during hunting season that said that our woods was so quiet that I could actually hear my breath. There was no sound out in the woods at all, and this was like around the October, November time frame when birds should have been out. It was a beautiful day. It wasn't cold out at all. The other video I posted recently was about a couple weeks ago. I was out in the woods and I was trying to record woodland sounds, trying to record our birds, trying to pick up some chatty squirrels because I wanted to get some nature recordings. And again, I made a comment about how quiet our woods is. No birds, no squirrels. It was February, it was 60 degrees, and we should have had some birds. I mean, I remember years ago, it used to be that when I would be out on deer stand, that even in the middle of winter, if I stood still long enough, I would have Tweety birds flying within an inch of my face, 6 inches. They would be landing in trees. You would hear them. There would always be that chatty squirrel giving away my location. And recently I went out, was trying to record bird sounds, and it was a good 50 degrees, almost 60 degrees out, and even still, there were no birds like back in the past. I've also started noticing this back in October, November. There was 70, 80 degree days, even the early morning hours before sunrise. You would not hear any birds. You would hear some ducks out on the lake. You would hear some geese out on the lake. But as far as woodland birds or chatty squirrels, you would not hear them. And it's pretty much been getting worse and worse over the last 5, 10 years. Every year it seems there's less and less woodland birds, squirrels, chipmunks, and everything out in the woods. So I want to kind of address in this podcast some of the possible reasons why this is happening. We're going to start off with the amount of dead trees that I am seeing out in the forest. Now, if you walk around, you will probably notice, especially if you spend a lot of time in the woods like me, that over the last couple years, we are seeing more and more dead trees. This is a picture that I took up in one of the woodland areas. You see there's some pine trees in there, but most of the trees that you see standing, and you also see them without bark, all these trees are actually dead. They're dead standing trees. They have no life to them at all. Here's another picture of some dead standing trees. These are old birch trees. This is a picture of tops of trees that you can see that all the bark is just gone. There's another cluster of dead trees. Not sure with the light in this photo if you're going to be able to see it, but all these trees, the bark is all gone. Here's a few more. This tree right here is dead standing. Looks like the woodpeckers have also got in, but notice all the bark is gone. Tree behind it had snapped off, bark is gone. You can see also on the right hand side as you're looking at this, another dead standing tree, bark is all gone. That picture didn't come out so good, but you get the idea. Here's a shot into a group of trees. You notice a lot of these trees are missing their bark as well. Here's some more that are missing their bark as well. So, what exactly is causing these dead standing trees? Some of you might say that there was a forest fire that came through. I'm not aware of any forest fires up in this area. There's no markings of it. But mostly it has to do with disease, insects, and fungus. I reached out to a local organization. I told them because of privacy reasons I would not publish who I reached out to or on the names who actually responded. But they did refer me to some articles that were put out by my local Audubon Society. And I'll reference those in a minute. But one of the big things that came up was the deforestations from the what was called the spongy moth. In this area, we refer to them as the gypsy moth caterpillars. So here's a picture of a gypsy moth caterpillar. You probably seen these around. You know the devastation that they actually cause, the defoliation of the trees. Scroll down here. Here's the pictures of what an adult gypsy moth looks like when it comes out of the larva stage. So what happens with the gypsy moth is once it actually attacks the leaves and defoliates it, your trees can no longer produce the chlorophyll that's necessary. They cannot absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They have trouble absorbing rainwater. A lot of trees get their rainwater through and their moisture through the roots, but also they get it through the leaves during rainstorms and these heavy dew days. So with the defoliation, they're just not getting the nutrients that they need. Now, I am not a botanist. I am not an ecologist. I'm just going by the articles that were sent to me and what I've noticed on my own. So the gypsy moth caterpillar, or the spongy moth as they call it, really did a number. They've seemed to come back like every 4 or 5 years. I remember when I was a kid back in the 1970s, the gypsy moths were so bad, we thought we could actually hear them eating the leaves, but no, that was actually the amount of poop that they were producing and dropping all over the roads, that like crunchy sound that you hear. And I remember it looked like the dead of winter. So that does a number on our trees. The other thing that does a number on our trees is something called beech bark disease. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up a picture of this. So what you're looking at right here is, if you look over to the right, this kind of fruity substance. This right here is a spore and a type of fungus that gets on the beech bark. And then ultimately what it ends up doing is taking over and removing all the bark that you see in the left-hand picture. Now, unfortunately, what happens here is once the bark is removed, you're removing the protective cover of the trees, and they start getting what's known as canker sores, where holes will develop in the trees. It also makes them susceptible to more fungus. It weakens the trees with these holes, because now you have cavities forming where the wind could actually make it a weak point and blow it over. You'll have woodpeckers that come in because of the insects that are getting in here, and woodpeckers doing a number to the trees. So that hurts the trees greatly. We have birch bark disease, which affects the birch bark. You see these giant clusters that form that people mistake for chaga. And what happens here with this is, if I scroll down to these pictures, you will see that once this rots off, it will form a cavity in the tree. Here's a good example over on the picture on the right hand side, where we have two knots, and then you can see the middle is starting to rot out. That will also affect our trees, making them weak, making them being able to blow over and such. You have other things happening to our trees, like the middle part here that's being hollowed out. That's caused by termites and carpenter ants. And I made a point about this in another video when I was out hiking, where some trees had fallen over that looked totally healthy, except the middle part was all gone. It was just totally eaten out, and you was only left with about that much wood all around the edge. So that also makes the tree susceptible, can't get the nutrients up through it, makes it die and susceptible to blow over. So that's kind of what's happening to the trees. There's also other things like predatory animals like beavers. Now, beavers will chop down trees, make their dams, and make their dens. That is not a real main problem. The main problem is trees also practice forest control on themselves. So if there's a particular tree that's becoming proliferant in that area, what the beavers will do is they will eat around the bark of any tree that they don't want, just totally removing the outside of the bark and then eating into it. They won't take down the tree, and they'll just leave it. You might see rows trees where they've just done this to, and then they'll let disease and birds and everything else, just fungus, just go ahead and take care of the trees for them. So beavers can also be destructive with their forest control. So basically what happens in the long run is when you start experiencing, dead trees, yes, they become a habitat for burrowing birds like owls and other type of birds that may nest into it. One of the things the Audubon Society is studying to see, how this is going to affect habitat in the long run, see what type of birds get in there. But the other thing I want to discuss also is the deforestation that's going on with these solar farms, where they're just totally clear cutting forests to put up solar panels. Now, my feeling is we've got enough buildings around here. You can put them on buildings and have them power the building itself, but they're totally clear cutting forests at a rapid rate. So what happens is when you got dead standing trees with no overhead canopy of leaves, you've got clear cut areas, you've got trees that are blowing over. First of all, the blowing over of trees can cause damages to houses or anything around it. But when you start losing the canopy cover, the temperature in that area goes up. So the birds and squirrels and that have no protection during the heat of the day. Now, I lived in North Carolina for about 20 years. The property that I owned and bought down there was an open farm field. We were talking lots of acreage with no trees. It was an old cattle corn field. They also raised tobacco in there. And when I first moved in there, I had absolutely no birds crossing in that area during the hottest parts of the summer. The reason for that is because they had absolutely no protection from the heat. And also flying long distances, birds need to rest. So they would fly a short distance, stay in a tree, fly a short distance. So without that there, the birds kind of vacated that area until I replanted some trees in my yard to attract the birds and also provided a habitat for them. So this is one of the reasons why we're not seeing so many birds in our area. The other thing is with the clear cutting of the forests and the solar panels, a lot of that light is reflecting down on the solar panels, and then the heat is being brought back up. So that's raising the temperature also. So we're not having any habitat. We're raising the core temperature in that area, creating these little micro ecosystems that is really not habitable to the birds. Some of the other things they also address as to why we might be losing our woodland birds is the increase of coyotes. Everybody knows the coyote population is on the rise, especially here in North America. Also, we're starting to see an increased sighting of bobcats. So we have predators that are coming in at higher rates that are just killing the birds. Light pollution, because we're clearing more and more lands. And what's happening is, especially during the night, it's not as dark, so we don't have the habitat for the birds to rest in. They're getting confused as to where this light is coming from, and it's kind of messing up their rhythms. Like for us, when we sleep, a lot of us require a dark room so that we can get the sound sleep. Well, the same thing with the birds. They require darkness, they require rest, and if they're not getting that, light cycles, increase in light can affect their habitat, cause them to drive towards other areas. The population, I'm watching my town turn into a suburb, unfortunately, especially with all the clear cutting that's going on for solar farms. We're building houses. They're starting to bring in more office buildings. So there's a lot of habitat that's being destroyed from that, which is going to create noise pollution. A lot of these houses, they're putting up, people are putting up bird feeders. Now, I'm not opposed to feeding the birds and providing a supplement. Unfortunately, though, there are some species of birds that will not feed off the wild if they can get an easy meal. It's kind of like humans. If we have to hunt versus going to a restaurant where there's a buffet, we're going to go to the restaurant where there's a buffet. It's an easy meal as opposed to hunting, finding our foods. May not be the most nutritious meals, which is why you've really got to be careful of the bird seed that you put out, because it doesn't have the nutritious factor to support our birds and such. There's also a lot of other things that the Audubon Society had put out that these people directed me to, and a few other articles. So I'm also going to put a link to these articles in the description of this podcast. But one of the things I want to bring up is this assessment report that was done about climate change and global warming. Like I said, I am going to stay away from all the political aspects, but in this document, if I bring up this chart right here that shows the effect of the climate change, basically we're talking about changes in terrestrial, which involves plant and animal life, changes in freshwater, and changes in our ocean. So we're talking about impacts on land and sea. If you take a look at this chart, over on the right hand side, you're going to see where there is confidence that is either high, very high, medium, low, no evidence, or not applicable. If you take a look at this, Africa right now is seeing changes in the ecosystems. They're seeing a little bit of species range shifts and not so much changes in the timing of it. Asia is seeing that. Australasia is seeing that. Then you start getting into Central and South America. Look how much this is having a high impact. Europe is seeing a very high impact. North America, where I'm at, seeing a very high impact. And it just goes on and on. Talks about the species extinction, the rise in sea levels, the rise in marine temperatures. Goes on to the wildfires that are happening and causing this to affect all our bird species. So I'm going to bring up an article right now, see if I can find it. These are some of the pictures of the 10 birds that have went extinct. Now, this article is from 2021, starting with the ivory-billed woodpecker. Now, you look at this, you may say this is a pileated woodpecker, and we still have these around. Apparently, this is a slightly different species, but they do grow as big. You got the Buckman's, warbler. Now, when they say they went extinct, some of these articles I read about extinct birds, it's not so much that they're gone entirely, it's just that their numbers are way down. You'd be very lucky if you see one or two. Other ones have gone totally extinct entirely. The great auk, the Carolina parakeet. Now, these used to be prolific through North Carolina. I will tell you, I've never seen one of these out in the wild. But when I lived down there for 20 years, they said that some of these do still exist, but not in great numbers. Some of them have made it come back. You got the dusky seaside sparrow, the heath hen, passenger pigeons, the only ones you see now are in captivity, the Labrador duck, Eskimo curlew, imperial woodpeckers, and that's a bad picture. So these are just some of the birds that have gone extinct based on an article from 2021. So some of the other reasons why they list that these birds are declining in number, we've already talked about the deforestations and stuff like that. They also cited the wind farms, especially the ones that are being built off the coast. And what happens is you have migrating birds that come down from the Arctic, or you also may have migrating birds that are local that may go from the mainland to an island where the ocean water is warmer, so the winter is not as severe as staying on the mainland. So when they start putting up these wind farms on the coast, the rotating blades, a lot of birds smack into them and die that way. With this migration of birds and the wind farms, they're talking about building more and more wind farms off the coast of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. There are a lot of birds that migrate even on a daily basis between the mainland and these islands. So off the coast of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we have all the little islands that are in Rhode Island itself, like Newport, Block Island, Prudence Island. Then you also start getting into Massachusetts with Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. Off the coast of Connecticut, there's Fire Island, which does not have any houses on it. It's mainly a wildlife habitat. Then you also got Long Island, which is part of New York and New York City, but it's more of a countryside. The further out to the tip you go with a lot of rich homes and that. So a lot of birds flying from our mainland to these islands. And what they want to do is they want to start putting up these wind farms stretching across the ocean in between these. So you're going to have your seagulls, your geese, your herons, and other birds that pose a risk by flying into these. So that's another reason why they also cite that, man is causing a lot of this on itself. So yeah, I thought I'd just discuss a little bit about what's been going on and why it's been so quiet and why we actually need to change some of this. Now, like I said, I'm going to stay out of the whole political thing about climate change because a lot of it is politically motivated, and some of the articles I just don't trust that are being put out right now. But just from what I'm seeing myself with the solar farms, the building that we're doing, the deforestation from disease and other pestilence, maybe we could do a better job at forest management. Now, I know in my area, the DEM really does not do forest management like they used to. A lot of it has to do with cost and also has to do with the trees. So when they go in and they harvest trees to improve a forest area, a lot of that trees get sold for wood so that they can either have it as firewood, or they sell it so that it turns into lumber for building furniture, houses, or whatever. So what happens is if you do forest management and you go in and a lot of your trees are dead and diseased, you cannot use that wood because you're going to be introducing insects, fungus. A lot of these trees are now rotted. The wood is not good quality. You know, you might have a big cavity in the middle of the tree. You only have about that much wood left, so you can't make planks out of it. So there's a lot of questions about that also, but they really have not been doing a lot of forest management lately, especially in my areas. A lot of these forests are overgrown. Um, you cannot really walk through an area without the brush being so high, which is also another issue. Trees die just because of age. So if you got a lot of underbrush that is keeping the sunlight out, you're also risking them dropping any seeds in that where they're not going to get the sunlight to actually grow, and then they'll sprout, and because they're not getting the sunlight, they're going to die off. If you don't properly thin your trees, what's going to end up happening is they're going to become overcrowded, and then you'll have that water source being all sucked up, and again, you're not going to get the sunlight through. We've also had a couple years of drought that's happened, although by the amount of rain we got this last year, you wouldn't know that. But 2 years ago, we had a drought that was so bad in this area. We had a lot of wildfires, mostly in the sense of what we call wildfires here in New England, mostly your brush fires that only burn like maybe an acre or two. We did have one that burned 10 acres. So we had some fire damage come through as well. So that was another reason why we've lost some of our forests and our woodlands. But yeah, I mean, if you go out walking, you just do not see the birds. You do not see the squirrels. You do not see basically a lot of our woodland animals that we used to see. So basically, what are the answers? What can we do? First of all, it's a very complex subject. First of all, you have to worry about the chemicals that you're putting out to control the insects and the fungus, because a lot of the chemicals are not good. That can affect the trees. That can also affect other wildlife. Then you also start getting people with cancer and other diseases from working with these chemicals. We saw a big thing with using Roundup to control some of the invasive plants. You also got to be careful with clear cutting because you're raising the core temperature and you're not having the shaded, cooler areas for our wildlife. It's a very complex things you got to look at as far as what we can do as a society. What you and I can do is, first of all, start taking care of around our houses. Kind of watch the insects, treat the insects that come in. There's another insect right now that's causing a lot of damage in our area. Over the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a new moth that has come to our area. It's called the spotted lanternfly. They're very beautiful. However, they are very, very destructive. They will lay their eggs on the trees, and then the larvae will actually bore into the bark, which is also causing bark damage, defoliation. It has spread basically to Japan, South Korea, and the United States. So this is another species that's coming into our area in the last 5 or 10 years that's really caused problems with our trees. And unfortunately, this is not happening just here in North America. Like I said, this is happening around the world. But if we take a look at the top 25 birds that have went extinct. In India, there was the dodo bird that went extinct in 1681. The Carolina parakeet, which is here in North America, looks like by the 1920s, they're saying that went extinct. The Bachman warbler, That one's last breeding was officially recorded in 1937. So you'll see some of those around still, but not in the numbers. The Tasmanian emus, Arabian ostrich, the great auks, the Cycles parakeet, the Lichen rail, passenger pigeons, and you can see a lot of people were used to hunt those. Stevens Island wren, ivory-billed woodpecker, not to be confused with the pileated. New Zealand quail, you know, affecting our predatory birds like the owls, birds of prey. Some of these went extinct in the 1800s, but more and more over the past 5 to 10 years, these numbers are greatly increasing of the number of birds that are going extinct. Or also the number of birds that are just totally leaving this area. I mean, I went to go hunting this year and I noticed that the goose population for Canadian geese was way down in this area. We had this happen back probably about 30 years ago where they actually had stopped Canadian geese hunting on the East Coast because the numbers were so far down. Then the Canadian goose rebound to the point that we actually had to start hunting again because there were just so many, and the amount of damage that was being caused by Canadian geese. But this year, yeah, the Canadian geese population was way down. Ducks in this state were way down. It seems like they moved to other states. So again, it all has to do with habitat. Our waters are not as clean as they used to be. Back when I was a kid, we thought nothing out of drinking the water out of lakes. Now we got more beavers around. There's more pollution. There's more insects. And I can tell you that a lot of our fish population is down. We don't catch the real amount of large bass like we used to, say 30 years ago. We don't catch the large amount of pickerel that we used to. Northern pike, they say that that was actually a stocked fish and not native around here, but they since stopped stocking it. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of our ecosystems are just being totally affected. And it's a shame because a lot of us like to go out in the woods and, you know, we do bird watching, we record sounds. We like to get out there on hot days to just get in the woods to a cooler forest. And yeah, I mean, the amount of dead trees, the lack of noise, lack of bird sightings, there's just not the amount of wild animals that we used to see. You know, like I said before, what can we do? I say if you own property and you own a large amount of property, do these birds a favor by planting trees that are not invasive, that are more native to this area. Leave some areas on the land that are natural for these birds. Kind of develop some water systems and control those water systems that, you know, create little ponds where birds can come in, you know, get a drink, cool off, bathe. Watch the wetlands in your area if you're going to be doing any land development, because destroying wetlands not only dries up the water, it destroys the trees, the birds don't have a place to drink, the squirrels don't come in. I'm going to refer you right now to a YouTube video that one of the people that I subscribe to had bought acreage of land, and he's actually gone through, and you really need to watch his channel. He's gone through and put in some ponds and on his property some, and also some in the woodland areas. And he's actually seen a lot of increase in birds. He's planted trees. He's done a lot of work. So I'm going to refer you to this guy right now. So if you're interested in building out a habitat on your property, especially if you have a large amount of property, to go ahead and set up some of these ecosystems for the animals and the birds, I really suggest that you watch this guy's YouTube channel, Stefano Aano. Hopefully I pronounced that properly. In here it talks about, one of his videos is he bought a wilderness homestead, and over the last year he's gone through and developed that. He's put in some ponds. He's talked about some of the different animals that have come in, getting his homestead ready for spring. The first month he was there. He's also a photographer, so this is why he builds a lot of habitats on his large property so that he can film these. And he also talks about the amount of birds that come in with, basically, if you see in this picture right here, these are all grasses that he had planted around a pond that he developed. So I suggest you take a look at this guy's channel and see what he's doing as far as habitat goes. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I hope you got something out of this. Like I said, I'm not an ecologist or a botanist, and I just kind of wanted to share basically what I've been noticing out in the woods with our forests, especially in my local area, and hopefully we can do something about it. Hopefully we can get in touch more with our Audubon societies, our Department of Environmental Management, get in touch more with local agencies that protect our woodlands and increase the habitat, get involved with our town council to really attend these meetings and talk about the damages that are being occurred with these solar farms, also with these clear cutting of our forests for new buildings, solar farms. I mean, it's just ridiculous the amount that's going on in my town alone and in my state alone. Also talk about these wind farms off the coast, how devastating they're going to be. As we go on more and more in time, and especially with the political agenda they're pushing with everything going electric, we got to think about, how we're going to deal with the energy consumptions of more and more of our devices. Truthfully, we should go back to a simpler way of living. There's a lot of things that we need to think about what's going on with our earth and with our forests and our woodlands, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 10 years. I mean, will we start seeing different animals come in and inhabit these dead trees? But what's going to happen once all these dead trees fall and there's no more woodlands in that area? I mean, you see areas where one side of the road or one particular part of the woodland has been totally devastated, but then you see other areas that have not. And those devastated areas are basically increasing. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully you learned something out of this. It was just something that I kind of wanted to address based on what I'm seeing. I kind of wanted to talk about these things because it's really concerning what's going on in our woodlands. So until the next time, I'm Scott Hervey with Scott Hervey Outdoors, and we'll see you in the next video. Hopefully we can start getting some springtime weather shortly.